I was 37 when the dreams started, and I thought I knew everything about my own mind. I'd spent years designing buildings, measuring spaces, calculating load-bearing walls. Logic was my language. Dreams were just neurons firing randomly while my brain cleaned house. But this wasn't random. The first time I saw her, I was standing in what looked like my childhood bedroom, except the walls were breathing. Not metaphorically breathing, actually expanding and contracting like lungs. The wallpaper with the little sailboats was peeling away in strips, revealing something darker underneath. That's when I realized I was dreaming, and the moment I knew it, everything became razor sharp. The colors intensified. The air felt thick as honey. This was what they called lucid dreaming, something I'd read about but never experienced. She was sitting on the bed that used to be mine, swinging her legs. Maybe 10 years old, with dark hair in 2 braids, and eyes that seemed older than they should be. She was wearing a yellow sundress that looked like it belonged in a different decade. "You're late," she said, like we'd made plans. I stared at her, trying to make sense of it. In dreams, you're supposed to accept whatever happens, but this felt different. I was fully aware I was dreaming, yet she seemed more real than the breathing walls. "Late for what?" I asked. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made my chest tight. "For everything, Nathan, but especially for this." I hadn't told her my name. In dreams, people just know things, I told myself. But something about the way she said it, with that mixture of affection and sadness, made me step closer. "Who are you?" "I'm Lena." She patted the bed beside her. "Sit with me. We don't have much time." I sat, and the mattress felt exactly like I remembered from childhood. That slight dip in the middle where I used to curl up during thunderstorms. The familiarity of it made my throat constrict. "This is your room," she said, "from when you were little. Do you remember the nightlight?" I looked over at the outlet where my old astronaut nightlight used to be. It wasn't there, but I could see the faint outline of it, like a ghost image burned into the wall. "You were afraid of the dark until you were 9, she continued. "Your mom would sit right here and read you stories about brave knights and dragons. You always wanted to be the knight." A chill ran down my spine. I'd never told anyone about being afraid of the dark that long. It was embarrassing, even now. "How do you know that?" Lena looked at me with those 2 old eyes. "Because you're my dad?" The words hit me like cold water. I stood up so fast the room spun. "That's impossible. I don't have children. I've never even been married." "I know," she said softly. "That's why I'm here." The room began to dissolve around us, the walls melting like watercolors in rain. I felt that familiar tug of waking up, but Lena reached out and touched my hand. "Not yet," she said. "Please." Her touch anchored me, and the dream reformed into something else entirely. We were in a park I didn't recognize, sitting on a bench beside a pond. The water was perfectly still, reflecting a sky that shifted between sunset and starlight. "This is where you'll meet her," Lena said. "Sarah. She be feeding the ducks with her nephew. You'll think she's beautiful, but you'll be too scared to talk to her." "Meet who?" "What are you talking about?" "Your wife, my mother." She pointed to a woman who wasn't there, but somehow I could see her anyway, a shadow of possibility. "She'll drop her phone in the water, and you'll help her fish it out. You'll make a joke about phones not being waterproof, and she'll laugh. That's how it starts." I felt like I was watching a movie of my own life, scenes that hadn't happened yet, but felt inevitable. "But you won't go to the park," Lena continued. "You'll decide to work late instead. You'll tell yourself it's because the Henderson project needs to be finished, but really it's because you're afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of letting someone matter." The accusation stung because it felt true. I'd spent years building walls higher and stronger than any building I'd ever designed. Relationships were messy, unpredictable. They didn't follow blueprints. "So what if I don't go to the park?" I asked, What happens then? Lena looked at the water, and I saw tears on her cheeks. Then I never exist. And you spend the rest of your life wondering what you missed. The dream shifted again, and we were in a hospital room. I was older, maybe in my 60s, lying in a bed with tubes and machines around me. The room was full of flowers, but empty of people. This is how it ends if you don't change, Lena said. Alone, successful, respected, but alone. You'll have built 100 buildings, but never a family, never a life. I wanted to argue, to say that I was fine on my own, that I didn't need anyone. But looking at that future self, surrounded by achievements and emptiness, the words died in my throat. Why are you showing me this? Because I love you, Dad, even though you don't know me yet, even though you might choose a path where I never exist. I wanted you to know that you matter, that the love you're afraid to give has somewhere to go. The hospital room faded, and we were back in the park. But this time, Sarah was there, really there, trying to coax a reluctant duck closer with breadcrumbs. She was exactly as Lena had described her, beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. She's going to drop her phone in about 30 seconds, Lena whispered, right there at the edge of the pond. And you're going to help her, and she's going to laugh, and you're going to fall in love with that laugh. But I'm dreaming this. This isn't real. The dream isn't real, but the choice is. Lena stood up and smoothed her yellow dress. Tomorrow is Saturday. You were planning to work on the Henderson project. Instead, go to Riverside Park at 2 o'clock. Feed the ducks. Wait for her phone to fall in the water. I felt the dream starting to fade, reality pulling me back toward waking. But I grabbed Lena's hand. Wait, will I see you again? That depends on you. She smiled that heartbreaking smile. If you go to the park, if you let yourself love Sarah, if you stop being afraid of building a life instead of just buildings, then maybe, in about 5 years, you'll meet a little girl who looks just like me. She'll be real then, not just a dream. And if I don't, then this is goodbye. The dream dissolved, and I woke up in my empty apartment, heart racing. Sunlight was streaming through the blinds, and I could hear the city waking up below. Saturday morning. I had plans to work on the Henderson project. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was just a dream, just neurons firing randomly. But I could still feel the weight of Lena's hand in mine, still hear the sadness in her voice when she said goodbye. I got up and made coffee, telling myself I'd forget about it by noon. Dreams always faded, but this one didn't fade. It stayed with me as I showered, as I ate breakfast, as I sat at my drafting table and tried to focus on blueprints. By 1:30, I was standing in my closet, looking at my clothes like they might tell me what to do. The rational part of my brain was screaming that I was being ridiculous. Following dream advice was the kind of thing that happened in movies, not real life. But the irrational part, the part that had been afraid of the dark until I was 9, the part that still sometimes wished my mother would come read me stories, was already reaching for a jacket. I got to Riverside Park at 10 minutes to 2, feeling like an idiot. There were people everywhere, families with children, couples walking hand in hand, joggers weaving between them. I found an empty bench by the pond and sat down, watching the ducks paddle lazily through the water. At exactly 2 o'clock, she appeared. Sarah, just as Lena had described her, walking toward the pond with a little boy who couldn't have been more than 6. She was wearing jeans and a green sweater that brought out her eyes, and she was carrying a bag of what looked like breadcrumbs. I watched, hardly breathing, as she helped the boy scatter food for the ducks. They were laughing about something, and the sound of her laughter made my chest tight, just like in the dream. She pulled out her phone to take a picture of the boy feeding the ducks. The little guy got excited and waved at her, and she leaned forward to get a better angle. The phone slipped from her hand and fell into the water with a soft splash. "No," she cried, reaching toward it instinctively before catching herself. "Oh, damn it." I was already moving, kicking off my shoes and rolling up my pants. The water was cold and murky, but I waded in and felt around until my fingers closed around the phone. "Got it," I said, walking back to shore. "Though I can't promise it's going to work. Phones aren't exactly waterproof." She laughed, and it was exactly the laugh from my dream. Right and genuine and a little embarrassed. "Thank you so much. I can't believe I did that. I'm usually more coordinated than this." "It happens," I said, handing her the phone. "I'm Nathan, by the way. Sarah. And this is my nephew, Jake." She gestured to the little boy, who was staring at me with wide eyes. "Are you okay? Your feet must be freezing." "I'm fine," I said, though I was starting to shiver. "Just glad I could help." She looked at the phone, tried to turn it on, and made a face. Dead as a doornail. Well, at least Jake got to see some excitement. "Maybe it'll work once it dries out," I offered. "Maybe." She smiled again, and I felt something shift inside me, like a door opening that I'd kept locked for years. I should probably get Jake home. "But thank you again, really." "Wait," I said, before I could lose my nerve. "Would you like to get coffee sometime? I mean, to make up for the phone. I feel partially responsible." "How could you possibly be responsible for my clumsiness?" "I don't know, but I'd still like to buy you coffee." She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in her eyes that made my heart race. "I'd like that," she said finally. "I'd like that very much." We exchanged numbers, using Jake's phone since hers was still waterlogged. As they walked away, Jake turned back to wave at me, and I waved back, feeling like I'd just stepped into a life I'd never imagined. That night, I dreamed of Lena again. But this time, she wasn't sad. She was sitting in the same park, but it was different somehow, more vivid, more alive. She was older too, maybe 12 or 13, and she was reading a book. "You went to the park," she said without looking up. "I did." "And you met Mom?" "I did." She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made everything worth it. "Good. Now the real work begins." "What do you mean?" "Living, Dad. Building a life instead of just buildings. It's going to be scary sometimes, but it's going to be worth it." I sat down beside her, and she leaned against me the way children do with their parents, trusting and warm. "Will I see you again?" I asked. "You'll see me every day," she said. "In every choice you make to love instead of fear. In every moment you choose to stay instead of run. And in about 5 years, you'll meet me for real. I'll be smaller then, and I won't remember these dreams, but I'll still be me. What if I mess it up? What if I'm not good at this?" "You will be," she said with absolute certainty, "because you already are. You just had to remember." The dream began to fade, but gently this time, like a sunset rather than a storm. I felt myself drifting toward waking, but I wasn't afraid. For the first time in years, I was looking forward to tomorrow. When I woke up, I had a text from Sarah. Her phone had miraculously come back to life after a night in a bag of rice. She wanted to know if I was free for coffee that afternoon. I texted back yes, and as I hit send, I could swear I heard the echo of a little girl's laughter, bright and joyful and full of promise. 5 years later, I'm standing in another hospital room, but this one is full of life and hope instead of loneliness and regret. Sarah is holding our daughter, who was born just 2 hours ago. She's perfect, tiny and wrinkled, and absolutely perfect. What should we name her? Sarah asks. I look at my daughter, at her dark hair and her eyes that already seem older than they should be, and I know exactly what her name is. Lena, I say. Her name is Lena. Sarah smiles. That's beautiful. Why, Lena? I touch my daughter's tiny hand, and she grips my finger with a strength that surprises me. Because she's been waiting for us, I say, and it's time for her to be real. That night, I dream of the park again. But this time, I'm not alone. Sarah is there, and Lena is there, and we're feeding the ducks together. Real ducks in a real park, with real breadcrumbs and real laughter. And in the dream, Lena looks at me with those two old eyes and says, "Thank you, Dad, for choosing love, for choosing me, for choosing to be brave enough to build a life." I wake up to the sound of my daughter crying, and I've never been happier to lose sleep. As I get up to help Sarah with the feeding, I think about dreams and choices, and the strange way the future sometimes reaches back to save the past. Maybe it was all just neurons firing randomly. Maybe it was just my subconscious trying to tell me what I already knew. But as I look at my daughter, my real daughter, sleeping peacefully in her crib, I know it doesn't matter what it was. What matters is that I listened. What matters is that I chose love over fear, connection over isolation, building a life over building walls. What matters is that Lena exists, not just in dreams, but in the real world, where she can grow up and make her own choices, and maybe, someday, have dreams of her own. And if those dreams ever need to reach back through time to save someone who's lost, well, I hope she'd be brave enough to do it. Just like she was brave enough to save me.